Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Masaki from State 483, and today we're talking about Gen 2 heroes. So, if you've been following me, we've been talking about some of the heroes, and in general, I usually give reviews for each generation of the heroes. As the general rule for ranking these heroes, if they're good, we do look at their base stats and see if they work well with each other. We look at their skills for military or exploration, see if there's any unique effects that are in play, or if they're basically stats that boost each other, have that kind of effects for the military side of things. The last thing we do is we judge the heroes based on the time of release, meaning if I'm not judging a Generation 2 hero, for example, when Generation 5 heroes are available, simply because that's not a fair comparison, I usually judge Generation 2 heroes at the time when there's only Generation 1 and 2 heroes available. Now, with that said, let's hop right in and start looking at the actual stats. So looking at the stats for Generation 2 heroes, we can see that in general, they're not markedly improved from Generation 1 heroes as far as the attack and defense of each of the troop type that they buff, right? They are also unique in that the three different heroes, Wolf, Trish, and Jeb, do buff the heroes differently, which is kind of interesting. In general, they usually have a stat that's like the same across the board. But over here, we can see that Jeb actually buffs 233%, Wolf does 222, and Trish does a 216% buff. So this is not the same as no other generations. Now, overall, Generation 2 heroes are not much improved over Generation 1, which gives a buff about 211%, Nicola and Maddie. So they're not that much better, honestly. So it's a high level. I think I feel like Generation 2 heroes are very skippable. But let's kind of dive into the details of each hero here. So the first one we're going to talk about is Wolf. I don't think Wolf has any, thing that kind of jumps out to me for anything. As you can see, settlement troop health and rally troop lethalities don't really stack well together. One is for offense and one is for defense, so usually that's not a good thing. His skills for exploration and also for military are not impressive. I mean, his last skill that kind of revives him once, it's not that great, not as good as somebody who can continuously heal throughout the battle. So in general, Wolf is a skip for me. Okay, so let's talk about the next hero here. Let's talk about Trish. So Trish is interesting. The first thing you'll notice, sure, she is a rider hero, but here's the problem. Rider, especially in the current metagame, is just not that great. I feel like they're not as tanky as infantry, and they're definitely not as good at dealing damage as hunters. Now, you still need some in your composition. Check out my composition guide for more details on that. But given that they're not that great, I usually just don't prioritize maxing out the rider hero as much as the other two. Now, looking at her skills, her medpack skill is actually still great as a rally joiner. If you put her as the lead, she does improve troop health, which is important. This is another hero in addition to Ghost and Nicola that can do this. So, you really don't need a third one, and it's not like at max level she can do more than those two heroes anyways. The other cool thing is that her first skill does heal, which is a unique skill. So I do take into account for those things. But even then, there's no fights currently in the current metagame where you have to actually heal or rely on healing from the scout hero of let's say, for example, the brawler. So currently, while this skill is interesting and unique, I don't see any actual use for it right now. Okay, the last hero we can talk about is Jeb. Jeb is interesting. So as a Gen 2 hero, his stats are not great. So they're maxed out. When they're maxed out, they're 233% for attack and defense for hunters. Now, here's the really interesting part. If you are considering at the time of Gen 2, there is no other easily obtainable Gen 2 hero that is also a sniper like Jeb is, right? So you have choices like Lucky, but Lucky is a VIP hero, which means that you can't use generic frags with her. You pretty much have to only dump like money into the VIP crates to get her. So it's totally different, and Jeb's stats are a little bit better than Lucky's, which is nice. The other thing I like about Jeb is that his two skills, Enemy Settlement Troop Lethality and Rally Troop Attack, work well together. These are both offensive stats, so when he is in a offensive map march, these two stats will actually just directly add to your stat charts, both at the same time, which is really nice. The last thing is Jeb's skills, his Explorer skills, number 2 and number 3, actually work really well together for some boss fights where you might want to do a lot of damage. So this is where it gets really interesting. So it's not a necessary hero to get. Definitely not somebody like Julie, who is really, really good. We'll talk about her at Gen 4. But he can be useful for some boss fights. So that could actually deal a little bit more damage. Again, it's very slight, but if you're kind of min-maxing, you do maybe want Jeb. So given the fact that he's technically the first legendary hero that you can get that buffs hunters, that does make him a little bit more viable as a hero that you might want to spend fragments in. Now, you can get him through the Jeb event of Jeb vouchers, so it's not that easy to get his fragments, but it's still kind of viable. So someone you can potentially consider, especially if you're rally leading for your team. So honestly, when Gen 2 hero hits, if you're spending money, my recommendation is maybe save the frags, because once Gen 3 hero hits, Gen 2 heroes are basically completely overshadowed. They're basically useless at that point. So save your generic hero frags for Gen 3. Maybe if you're spending money, spend some of that money on hero gear and hero gear parts, or in chief gear or chief gear badges. Those can also increase your stats, but they will be permanent because they will work with any set of heroes, right? If you're worried, for example, in a fight where you don't have Gen 2 heroes, but your enemies do, having better base chief stats actually could help as well. And those are more long. They definitely have a better longevity than getting the tier Gen 2 heroes. So in conclusion, I just don't think Gen 2 heroes are very worth it. I normally recommend almost all players wait till Gen 3 before they really start spending fragments. The Gen 2, Gen 3 schedule is pretty fast. I mean, you're going to have Gen 2 for about a month before Gen 3's released. So it's not really that long before you can access a much better set of heroes. Jeb might be the only exception where you may want to put some fragments into him, if not maxing him, just for the fact that he can actually still be useful with respect to his exploration skills. His military buffs are pretty good, and the fact that he's the only one that can have a better hunter buff, and he's kind of your first available legendary hunter hero. So that's pretty much for Gen 2. Again, just don't waste too much on Gen 2. Just wait for Gen 3 is my general conclusion. All right, that's Masaki from State 43 signing out. Y'all stay classy.